Hello everybody, Dr. Eric Fraser here. Thanks for joining me for this quick presentation to answer the question, why did the HR director quit? So let's take a look at what the overall analysis looks like, and then we'll get into some of the granular details. So the problem that was presented was that there was a disparity between strategic values and psychological competencies of their top talent folks, right? So looking at the psychological traits that really drive success, things like delegation, diplomacy, communication, things like that. So the strategic value is pretty common among many organizations, and obviously many have longer lists or more refined lists. But for this company, it was people, growth, and continuous improvement. The next level down was really looking at the hiring method and the ongoing development that was going on there. And the answer was it was very fragmented. There wasn't a structured, standardized system, and they didn't have a methodology that was standardized amongst all of the HR team to drive success by identifying the right people with the right skills, the softer skills, the psychological skills, and finding those people and then developing them. So that was really leading to problems down the pipeline in terms of mitigating their hiring losses. Let's take a closer look at what the identified areas were. Okay, so key finding one, there was definitely a misalignment between the values and the hiring methods that I just described. The people identified were between 4 and 10 years into the company. So there's always a lot of excitement when people come on board and they're, happy to be there and moving forward. And then all of a sudden they hit like this imaginary ceiling and they were exiting because they didn't feel like their goals and objectives and professional development were being realized. And that kind of ties into key finding 3, that the promise of the company was not delivering, right? So they had these expectations coming in. And think about the younger employees in your organizations, particularly the millennials and the Gen Zs. They've got high expectations for personal and professional development. And if your core values of your company promise that but then don't deliver, they're going to leave, right? There's countless articles pointing out how much it really, quote, matters to younger employees about being developed in those regards in many ways. Key finding 4 were performance reviews. They just weren't tapping into professional personal development. It was too much tied to specific skills, particular outcomes, and it was, again, not fulfilling the promise that the company was offering on their core values. So again, performance reviews, we'll talk about solutions for that shortly. Key finding 5, the interviewing methods really didn't capture the full spectrum of what they were looking for. Like I told you before, they had a couple platforms that they used, for tapping, some psychological metrics. But again, there's real limitations with that, because if you're chasing down a particular profile and someone's conscientious or they're friendly and they show flexibility, what does that really tell you? It gives you a baseline of data, but again, in terms of moving forward and really understanding that person more deeply, it's got its limitations. And let's face it, anyone can take those tests, especially sophisticated new hires, and see through the questions. We call that face validity in psychology, and know how to present themselves in a very favorable light. So there's significant limitations with those platforms. Key finding 6. This one was really fascinating because whereas I never make predictions, admittedly the science of psychology cannot predict future behavior any better than any other particular science. So the interesting thing, though, was in interviewing the HR team, I discovered that there was a lot of unhappiness there. There was a lot of expectation unfulfillment, whereas one of the questions I asked was, well, who are you being mentored by in the organization? Guess what the answer was? Nobody. And that was an expectation that they all had. I wasn't crystal clear who was going to exit, but I had a very strong hunch that someone was going to exit the HR team, and it turned out to be the director, of course. So what are the solutions? 1, standardized hiring interview protocols based on the competencies. So again, getting into a more what I call structured professional judgment methodology, which is very research informed. It just means organizing the psychological traits so they match the core values of the company, and then interviewing around them, right? It all goes back to the questions that are developed and designed in these interviews. Number 2 was expanding the professional development, not just making this available to an elite team, but really making it available across the company so that everybody feels that they are engaged in professional development, and then also expanding the company's awareness and analysis of their needs through new survey data, right? So when's the last time your organization conducted a survey about personal and professional development? 10 years ago, that data is stale. It's no longer useful. 5 years ago, you really need to do this on a routine basis to align your organization with your company's needs. Okay, last but not least, what are the solutions? Tackle this head on. Number one, if your company's lacking awareness around strategic values and how to articulate those and match those up with competencies, build an awareness presentation, have someone come in and speak about that. I love doing that. Number two, thinking about the competencies, you may want to have some training and coaching around those, ones that you particularly have, ones that need further refinement in your organizational strategy. And then thirdly, looking at your methodology for hiring, right? And getting some consultation for interviewing methods that will refine your process, standardize your process, and drive the results that give the success that you're looking for with your hiring. Happy to continue the conversation with you. Reach out with any questions, and thank you very much for your participation today.